Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into a really fascinating paradox about human financial behavior, and it's something that affects literally every single one of us. Have you ever wondered why making a profit feels, well, pretty good, but losing that exact same amount of money feels absolutely devastating? It's like a gut punch? Well, it turns out your brain actually has a hidden, hardwired system that actively fights against rational financial math, and honestly, until you understand how it works, it's going to keep costing you. So let's explore what we call the mirror of loss.
All right, Section 1, the coin flip test, a game of fair odds.
Okay, let's kick things off with a super simple game. Just imagine I have a coin right here in my hand, and we're going to flip it. If it lands on heads, I will hand you 100 rupees. But if it lands on tails, you have to give me 100 rupees. It's a completely fair bet, right? A 50-50 chance with symmetrical upside and downside. So, do you take the bet? If you're like the vast majority of people, you're probably saying no way. You mathematically reject fair odds, and that simple no exposes one of the most fundamental, powerful truths about how our brains actually process money.
Moving right along to Section 2, the science of loss and its emotional weight. Let's unpack exactly why you just turned down a perfectly fair bet.
Picture this. You're walking down the street, and boom, you find a crisp 100 rupees note. You pick it up, put it in your pocket, and it feels pretty great. It's a nice little bonus to your day. But now, imagine reaching into your pocket later that evening and realizing that same 100 rupees bill fell out and is just gone forever. How does that feel? It feels awful, right? It actually feels noticeably worse than the joy of finding it in the first place. It is the exact same currency amount. The math is totally identical, but the emotional weight it carries, it's completely unbalanced.
Psychologists actually have a specific name for this heavy, sinking feeling. It's called loss aversion. It's the psychological reality where the pain of losing is significantly more powerful than the joy of an equivalent gain. So the really crucial point here is that your brain is definitely not running a fair, objective calculator when it looks at money. No, it is running a highly sensitive threat detector.
And get this, groundbreaking research by psychologists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky actually put a real number on this feeling. Roughly speaking, losses feel about twice as powerful as equivalent gains. The pain is quite literally double the joy. To make you whole on the emotional pain of losing 100 rupees, you wouldn't just need to gain 100 rupees back. Actually, scratch that. You'd often need to gain closer to 200 rupees just to emotionally break even.
Section 3, the ancient brain trap, evolutionary origins. So why in the world are we wired this way?
First off, if you're sitting there feeling a little guilty or irrational right now, please don't, because there's a deeply, deeply logical reason for this. Let's look at the ancient world versus the modern world. For most of human history, a loss wasn't just a bummer. It could literally be fatal. If you lost your winter food supply or your shelter, you might not survive the season. A gain, like say finding some extra berries, was nice, but a loss could straight up end you. Evolution strictly wired us to fear losing far more than we enjoy winning because that specific instinct kept your ancestors alive. But the modern problem, that ancient instinct is still running today, except now it's mistakenly pointing its life or death panic alarms at your mutual funds and your modern bank account.
Which brings us to Section 4, where it costs you modern traps. Let's see exactly how this ancient survival mechanism sabotages your modern life.
Trap number 1 is investing. When the market dips and your portfolio drops, the fear of losing just screams at you. It feels like a genuine, immediate threat to your survival. So what do people do? They panic and they sell. But here's the catch. By selling during a dip, you permanently lock in the exact loss you were so terrified of. Meanwhile, the disciplined investor who actually understands this bias, they do nothing. They wait it out and eventually they recover.
Trap number 2 is shopping. Think about that classic phrase, sale ends tonight. Stores weaponize loss aversion against us every single day. When you rush to buy that item before midnight, it's almost never about the actual discount. It's the psychological fear of losing the deal itself. You aren't really buying the item, you're just paying money to make the fear of loss go away. Trap number 3 impacts your career. People will stay in a stagnant role they have completely outgrown for years. Why? Because leaving a comfortable, familiar job feels like losing something certain. Even when the potential upside of a new career or starting your own business is mathematically massive, the brain heavily weighs the loss of your current comfort zone. It traps you in this false sense of certainty.
This ancient instinct also builds into something we call the endowment twist. This quote hits the nail on the head. The moment you own something, you value it more. Researchers proved this with a brilliant, simple coffee mug experiment. If you give someone a standard, totally generic coffee mug,
and then ask them what they'd sell it for, they suddenly demand far more money than a stranger would ever pay for that identical mug. Why? Because just by owning it, letting go of it magically turned into a loss. It's just loss aversion wearing a completely different mask.
All right, Section 5, how to outsmart yourself. Flipping the switch. Now that we've seen the traps, how do we actually escape them?
The single most important shift in mindset you can make today is realizing that loss aversion is a survival feature, not a flaw. You do not need to feel ashamed of it. It was perfectly tuned for a world that, quite frankly, just no longer exists. You can't delete this programming from your brain, but you can catch it. The goal isn't to be some fearless, emotionless robot. The goal is simply to notice the exact moment your ancient brain mistakes a market dip, a missed sale, or a career change for a literal, physical threat to your survival.
So, here are 3 actionable steps to flip the switch to manual override. First, when you feel that sudden flash of financial panic, just pause and ask yourself, am I reacting to a real, permanent loss or just to the fear of one? Usually, it's just the fear. Second, reframe your choices into gains. Instead of agonizing over what might I lose today if the market drops further, try asking yourself, what future growth do I keep by staying invested? Trust me, it lands completely differently in your mind. And third, when a salesperson or a flashy website pushes intense urgency on you, name the trigger out loud. Literally say to yourself, they are triggering my loss aversion. The manipulative spell breaks the absolute moment you shine a light on it.
Let's bring this all the way back to that coin flip at the start of our explainer. Mathematically, over 100 flips, betting on heads or tails for 100 rupees is a perfectly fair bet. But your brain? It's going to fight you on it every single time, because it is busy protecting a version of you that lived 10,000 years ago. Losing 100 rupees will always sting more than gaining it feels good. But now at least you know exactly why. Money ultimately rewards the people who can separate a real threat from an ancient instinct, because while your brain is a remarkable survival machine, your money needs a completely different machine. So the next time a limited-time offer flashes on your screen or you hesitate to sell a bad investment, ask yourself, is this a modern threat to my survival or just a caveman afraid of the dark? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll see you in the next one.